back, everybody. Welcome back to the Road Trip Kingdom Builders. Welcome back, Road Trippers. Welcome back, Akeem, Akatim, brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, aunties and uncle, grandmas and grandpas, man. Everybody in the house, man. Shalom. Shalom, man. Peace and blessings to each and every single one of you, right? Your homes, your dwelling places, your children, right? Your loved ones, friends, and your pets, man. Little fur babies. All right, man. Hallelujah, man. All praises to the Most High, Abba Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Glory to Yahweh Shai. Honors to the Ruach HaKodesh. My love and my respect goes out to each and every single one of y'all. You better believe that, all right? That's right. That's right. So, here we're back, man. Second Maccabees, chapter 3. We're going to read 3 and maybe 4. I don't know. We'll see how we do, all right? We'll see how we do. But anyway, let's get started, though. You got a few moments if you want to follow along with me. Get your scrolls out with you. You know what I mean? Lay them out flat so you can read them real good. Get some nice light. Get a nice comfy seat. Get something cold to drink, man. Kick your feet up. Relax, man. All right. Let's get this work. Y'all ready? Second Maccabees, chapter 3. Let's begin, family. All right, chapter 3, and it reads, When the Kodesh city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well, because of the godliness of Onias, the high priest, and his hatred of wickedness, it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place and glorify the temple with the noblest presents, insomuch that even Seleucus, the king of Asia, and his own revenues bear all the costs belonging to the services of the sacrifices. But one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, having been made guardian of the temple, fell out with the high priest about the ruling of the market in the city. And when he could not overcome Onias, he got him to Apollonius, the son of Thraseus, who at that time was governor in Colossyria, and Phenocia, and he brought him word how that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of untold sums of money, so that the multitude of the funds was innumerable, and that they didn't pertain to the account of the sacrifices, but that it was possible that these should fall under the king's power. And when Apollonius met the king, he informed him of the money whereof he had been told, and the king appointed Heliodorus, who was his chancellor, and sent him with a commandment to accomplish the removal of the aforesaid money. So out of Heliodorus took his journey under a color of visiting the cities of Colossyria and Phenocia, and in fact to execute the king's purpose. And when he was come to Jerusalem and had been courteously received by the high priest of the city, he laid before the man account of the information which he had been given him, and declared why he was come. And he inquired if the truth these things were so. And the high priest explained to him that there were in treasury deposits of widows and orphans, and moreover some money belonging to Hyrcanus, the son of Tobias, a man in very high place, and that the case was not as the impious Simon falsely alleged, and that in all there were 400 talents of silver and 200 of gold, and that it was altogether impossible that wrong should be done to them that had put trust in the holiness, the Kodeshness of this place, and in the majesty of the inviolable sanctity of the temple honored over all the world. But Heliodorus because of the king's commandments given him, said that in many cases this money must be confiscated for the king's treasury. So having appointed a day, he entered in to direct the inquiry concerning these matters. And there was no small distress throughout the whole city, and the priests, prostrating themselves before the altar in their priestly garments, and looking toward heaven, called upon him that gave the law concerning deposits, that he should preserve these treasures safe for those that had deposited them. And whosoever saw the mien of the high priest was wounded in mind, for his countenance, and the change of his color betrayed the distress of his soul. For a terror and a shuddering of the body had come over the man, whereby the pain that was in his heart was plainly shown to those who looked upon him. And those who were in the houses rushed flocking out to make a universal supplication, because the place was like to come into contempt. And the woman, girded with sackcloth under their breast, thronged the streets. And the virgins that were kept in ward ran together, some to the gates, others to the walls, and some looked out through the windows. And all, stretching out their hands toward heaven, made their solemn supplication. Then it would have pitied a man to see the multitude prostrating themselves all mixed together, and the expectation of the high priest in the sore distress. While therefore they called upon the Almighty El Shaddai, right, Most High, to keep the things entrusted to them safe and sure for those that had entrusted them. Heliodorus went on to execute that which had been decreed. But when he was already present there with his guards near the treasury, the sovereign of the Ruachs and of the all authority caused a great apparition, so that all that had presumed to come in with him, stricken with dismay at the power of Yahweh, fainted and were sore afraid. For there was seen by them a horse with a terrible rider upon it, and adorned with beautiful trappings. And he rushed fiercely and struck at Heliodorus with his forefeet. And it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had complete armor of gold. 2 others also appeared to them, young men notable in their strength and beautiful in their glory, and splendid in their apparel, who stood by him on either side, and scourged him unceasingly, inflicting on him many sore stripes. And when he had fallen suddenly to the ground, and great darkness had come over him, his guards caught him up, and put him into the litter, and carried him that had just now entered with a great train, and all his guards into an aforesaid treasury, himself now brought to utter helplessness, manifestly made to recognize the sovereignty of Elohim. And so while he, through the working of Yahweh, speechless and bereft of all hope and deliverance, lay prostrate, they blessed the Most High, and made marvelous his own place, and the temple which a little before was full of terror and alarm was filled with joy and gladness after the Almighty El Shaddai appeared. But quickly certain of Heliodorus' familiar friends implored Onias to call upon the Most High and grant life to him, who lay quiet as at the last gasp. All right, 32. And the high priest, secretly fearing lest the king might come to think that some treachery toward Heliodorus had been perpetuated by the Yahudim, brought a sacrifice for the deliverance of the man. But as the high priest was making the atoning sacrifice, the same young men appeared again to Heliodorus, arrayed in the same garments, and they stood and said, Give Onias the high priest great thanks. For his sake the Most High has granted you life. And do you, since you have been scourged from heaven, publish to all men the sovereign majesty of Yahweh. And when they had spoken these words, they vanished out of sight. So Heliodorus, having offered a sacrifice to the Most High, and vowed great vows to him that had saved his life, and having graciously received Onias, returned with his army to the king. And he testified to all men the works of the great Yahweh, which he had seen with his eyes. And when the king asked Heliodorus what manner of man was fit to be sent yet once again to Jerusalem, he said, If you have any enemy or conspirator against the state, send him there, and you will receive him back well scourged. If he even escape with his life, because of the truth, there is about the place a power of Elohim. For he that has his dwelling in heaven himself has his eyes upon that place and helps it, and those who come to hurt it, he strikes and destroys. And such was the history of Heliodorus and the keeping of the treasury. That's the end of chapter 3, family. That's the end of chapter 3. Hallelujah, man. All right. And you know what? Mishpachah, Kingdom Builders, Road Trippers, I think we're going to go ahead and get chapter 4. What do you think? Want to do it? I kind of do. All right, man. Chapter 4, and it reads, chapter 4. But the aforesaid Simon, he who had given information of the money and had betrayed his country, slandered Onias, saying that it was he who had incited Heliodorus, and made himself the author of these evils, and him that was the benefactor of the city, and the guardian of his fellow countrymen, and a zealot for the laws, he dared to call a conspirator against the state. But when the growing enmity between them waxed so great that even murders were perpetuated through one of Simon's trusted followers, Onias, seeing the danger of the contention, and that Apollonius, the son of Menethius, the governor of Colasyria and Phoenicia, was increasing Simon's malice, betook himself to the king, not to be an accuser of his fellow citizens, but looking to the good of all the people, both public and private. For he saw that without the king's providence, it was impossible for the state to obtain peace any more, and that Simon would not cease from his madness. But when Seleucus was deceased, and Antiochus, who was called Epiphanius, succeeded to the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Ananias, supplanted his brother in the high priesthood, having promised to the king at an audience 360 talents of silver, and out of another fund 80 talents. And beside this he undertook to assign 150 more, if it might be allowed him through the king's authority to set him up a Greek place of exercise, and form a body of youths to be trained therein, and to register the inhabitants of Jerusalem as citizens of Antioch. See, they wanted to participate in like the Olympic Games. They wanted to assimilate with the Gentiles. You see what I'm saying? It's like, it's real weak, man. They wanted to assimilate. He wanted to get a gym and a place where they could run around naked with leaves on and wrestle men and boys and stuff. Just trash, bro. All right. Verse 10. And when the king had given assent, and he had gotten possession of the office, he out with brought over them of this own race of the Greek fashion, and setting aside the royal ordinances of special favor to the Yahudim granted by the means of John, the father of Ptolemaeus, who went on the embassage to the Romans for friendship and alliance, and seeking to overthrow the lawful modes of life, he brought in new customs forbidden by the law, for he eagerly established a Greek place of exercise under the citadel itself, and caused the noblest of the young men to wear the Greek cap. See what I'm saying? And so there was an extreme of Hellenization, in advance of an alien religion, by reason of the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly man, and no high priest, so that the priest had no more any zeal for the services of the altar, but despising the sanctuary and neglecting the sacrifices, they hastened to enjoy that which was unlawfully provided in the plastera, after the summons of the discus, making of no account the honors of their fathers, and thinking the glories of the Greeks best of all, by reason whereof sore calamity beset them, and the men whose ways of living they earnestly followed, and to whom they desired to be made like in all things, these became their enemies and punished them. For it is not a light thing to do impiously against the laws of the Most High, but these things that time following will declare. Now when certain games that came every 5th year were kept at Tyre, the Olympics, and the king was present, the vile Jason sent sacred envoys, as being Antiochians of Jerusalem, bearing 300 drachmas of silver to the sacrifice of Hercules, which even the bearers thereof thought not right to use for any sacrifice, because it was not fit, but to expend on another charge. See what I'm saying? Just treachery, man. Just wickedness, man. And though in the purpose of the sender of the money was for the sacrifice of Hercules, yet on account of present circumstances it went to the equipment of the galleys. Now when Apollonius, the son of Menesthius, was sent to Mizraim for the enthronement of Ptolemy Philometor as king, Antiochus, learning that Ptolemy had shown himself ill affected toward the state, took thought for the security of his realm. For that reason, going by the sea to Joppa, he traveled on to Jerusalem, and being magnificently received by Jason and the city, he was brought in with torches and shouting. This done, he afterward led his army down to Phoenicia. Now after a space of 3 years, Jason sent Menelaus, the aforesaid Simon's brother, to bear the money to the king, and to make reports concerning some necessary matters. But he, being commended to the king, and having glorified himself by the display of his authority, got the high priesthood for himself, outbidding Jason by 300 talents of silver. And having received the royal mandates, he came to Jerusalem, bringing nothing worthy the high priesthood, but having the passion of a cruel tyrant, and the rage of a savage beast. And whereas Jason, who had supplanted his own brother, was supplanted by another, and driven as a fugitive into the country of the Ammonites. Menelaus had possession of the office, but of the money that had been promised to the king nothing was duly paid, and that though Sostratus, the governor of the Citadel, demanded it, for to him appertained the gathering of the revenues, for which cause they were both called by the king to his presence. And Menelaus left his own brother Lysimachus for his deputy in the high priesthood, and Sostratus left Crates, who was over the Cyprians. Now which such was the state of things, it came to pass that they of Tarsus and Malus made insurrection, because they were to be given as a present to Antiochus, the king's concubine. The king therefore came to Sicilian all haste to settle matters, leaving for his deputy Andronicus, a man of high rank. And Menelaus, supposing that he had gotten a favorable opportunity, presented to Andronicus certain vessels of gold belonging to the temple, which he had stolen. Other vessels also he had already sold to Tyre and the surrounding cities. And when Onias had sure knowledge of this, he sharply reproved him, having withdrawn himself into the sanctuary of Daphne and lies by Antioch. For that reason, Menelaus, taking Andronicus apart, prayed him to kill Onias, and coming to Onias, and being persuaded to use treachery, and being received as a friend, Andronicus gave him his right hand with oaths of fidelity, and though he was suspected by him, so persuaded him to come out of the sanctuary, and out with he dispatched him without regard of justice. Oh man. Verse 35. For the which cause not only the Yahudim, but many also of the other nations had indignation and displeasure at the unjust murder of the man. And when the king was come back again from the places in Sicilia, the Yahudim that were in the city pleaded before him against Andronicus. The Greeks also joined with them in hatred of the wickedness, urging that Onias had been wrongfully slain. Antiochus therefore was heartily sorry, and was moved to pity, and wept because of the sober and well-ordered life of him that was dead. And being inflamed with passion he stripped off Andronicus' purple robe, and tore off his undergarments. And when he had led him round through the whole city to that very place where he had committed impiety against Onias, there he put the murderer out of the way, the Most High rendering to him the punishment he had deserved. Now when many sacrileges had been committed in the city by Lysimachus, with the consent of Menelaus, and when the report of them was spread abroad outside, the people gathered themselves together against Lysimachus, after many vessels of gold had been already dispersed. And when the multitudes were rising against him, and were filled with anger, Lysimachus armed about 3,000 men, and with unrighteous violence began the conflict with Horon, a man far gone in years, and no less also in madness, leading the attack. But when they perceived the assault of Lysimachus, some caught up stones, others logs of wood, and some took handfuls of the ashes that lay near, and they flung them all pell-mell upon Lysimachus, and those who were with him, by reason of which they wounded many of them, and some they struck to the ground, and all of them they forced to flee. But the author of the sacrilege himself they killed beside the treasury. But touching these matters, there was an accusation laid against Menelaus. And when the king was come to Tyre, the 3 men that were sent by the Senate pleaded the cause before him. But Menelaus, seeing himself now defeated, promised much money to Ptolemy, the son of Dorymenes, that he might win over the king. Whereupon Ptolemy, taking the king aside into a cloister, as it were to take the air, brought him to be of another mind. And him that was the cause of all the evil, Menelaus, he discharged from the accusations. But these hapless men, whom if they had pleaded even before Cynthians would have been discharged uncondemned, them he sentenced to death. Soon then did those who were spokesmen of the city, and the families of Yahsher'al and the Kodesh vessels suffer that unrighteous penalty, for which cause even certain Tyrians, moved with hatred of the wickedness, provided magnificently for their burial. and Menelaus through the covetous dealings of those who were in power remained still in his office, growing in wickedness as a great conspirator against his fellow citizens. That's the end of chapter 4, okay? We're going to close it up there, Fate. Hopefully that wasn't too long. We'll come back and get chapter 5 and 6 on the next one. Yeah, man, doubling it up is not too bad. I mean, right now, until we get one of those ones that's like 3 pages, then that's going to be a standalone, you know what I mean? All right. But in the meantime, thanks for riding along with me, family. Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings to each and every single one of y'all. I'll see you sooner than later. You better believe it. All praises to the Most High. I love you. Peace. Yeah.
Cobet Voma Studios.